We can work it out. That is the message of these two gentlemen that are sitting next to Brian. We have Senator Tim Scott from the great state of South Carolina, Congressman Trey Gowdy, who just announced that he's going to be resigning, but also from the great state of South Carolina. And you two have become fast friends, and you wrote a book about it. But before we get to that, we wanted to talk to you a little bit about the news. Robert Mueller has announced that he is investigating.
He's turning to his attorney.
You know. All right. Well, he announces that President Trump is not under a criminal investigation. What does this mean?
You know what? When I heard that, I wasn't sure what it meant because you never know where the facts are going to take you. I think if we weren't in a political environment, he probably would not have said that. But you generally don't tell people that you're not under investigation because you don't know what the next witness is going to say. This is such a weird hybrid of criminality and politics that I think he felt a special obligation to say, look, you're not the target of the investigation, but if the next witness says something different, all that can change.
So if you were his attorney, you would not say, you wouldn't have a sigh of relief?
Heavens no. I will have a sigh of relief when the investigation is over, and even then, maybe not.
So if he's not the target, who is the target?
I think the target, hopefully, are the Russians. And, importantly, the second clause of Mueller's jurisdiction is what did Russia do and then who, if anyone? And the key there is if anyone did they collude, conspire, confederate with. The Russians have already been indicted, I think a dozen of them. Manafort, Gates, Flynn, but those weren't for collusion. Some of those were for lying. I don't know whether anyone colluded with the Russians. That's who would be the target, but we'll let Mueller figure it out.
Right. Sadly, it's going to go on for a while longer, and they're going to have nothing but leaks because they do a good job of keeping quiet. So I loved your book.
Thank you.
I had a chance to witness the friend. This is why I knew it's authentic. I witnessed the friendship when you were kind enough to let me follow you around. You couldn't get this guy out of your office. And then I said to you, I go, oh, Congressman, I know you're from South Carolina. He goes, I didn't know you were friendly. He goes, we have dinner every night.
Yeah.
And I knew there was something real here. So when you were a congressman, describe the relationship.
I mean, it's been a powerful force. There's an old scripture in the Proverbs 27:17. As iron sharpens iron, one person does the other. Trey has really been a grounding force for me, an anchor. He has helped me get better at serving the constituents. And he's been someone that I can actually count on. They typically say if you want a friend in Washington, buy a dog.
Right. He differs.
I got lucky. It was a blessing from the good Lord.
Oh, that's so sweet. So tell us about your backgrounds. How did you become unified? Because you grew up in different backgrounds.
We describe our relationship as unlikely. Part of that unlikeliness is us even coming to Congress. If you had seen our transcripts from high school, you would not think either one of us would be, well, you wouldn't have thought we'd gone to college, much less gone to Congress. We met in that historically large class of 2010, and y'all will remember this. He was far and away the best known person in that class.
You felt like he was the superstar.
He was Elvis.
He was on television every...
I mean, Sean Duffy's well known, Christy known, but Tim was Elvis. And so I watched him turn down the presidency of our freshman class, which is hard to do for someone in politics. Anything that has the word president in it, you want it. But he turned it down. So I began to watch him and how strategic he was. And then it was one night, he showed a vulnerability that people at that level rarely do. I mean, he was just overwhelmed. Everyone wanted him to be the advocate for their cause. And I remember telling him at the Capitol Hill Club, you've earned every bit of capital you have. Nobody else was knocking on doors in the Charleston heat. Nobody puts up with the things that he has to read on his Twitter feed and on his Facebook page. Spend your political capital the way you want to do it, not the way anyone else. That, to me, was the night I think our relationship became a little more even.
Absolutely. And this book talks about how you unified personally, but also can speak to our politics. In big, bold letters on the back of your book, it says, our nation is hungry for unity. Some would challenge that thesis and say maybe it isn't. How do you change that?
Well, I think it is, actually. If you think about the fact that 80% of people have 80% of the things in common, the question is how do we get there? And the reality of it is that politics has not been the way that we get there. Trey and I found unity in Washington, but most of us will find it house to house. Having an unlikely friendship is about finding people who are not like yourself and spending time with them. The fact of the matter is we have a lot of criticism.
It's like Roseanne.
Well, Roseanne and President Trump. So here you go. You've got someone who's an actress and the president working together because there's something in common. People are hungry for authenticity. You don't actually have to agree on the direction.
Right.
You have to agree on the fact that we are all Americans.
So
It
I'm
matters.
reading your book, and I talk in race relations. We talk a lot about race relations on this couch, especially when President Obama was elected, because all of a sudden you make a criticism or you have a critique, and people say, "Well, you're only saying that because the color of his skin." And we thought, well, "What are you talking about? That's not how we see it at all." But you can't possibly know what life is growing up with Tim Scott. He can't know what his life for you is. But I thought when Charles Barkley was on the Axe Files over the weekend talking about race, I thought he had a perspective that could help this conversation. So let's take a listen to what he says about race today.
What I talk about is economic racism. When you don't give people economic opportunity. And I actually think that we spend too much time talking about race. America's divided by economics. Racism does exist. I'm not giving anybody a pass on that. But what America has become, rich people against poor people. We put all the poor people in bad neighborhoods. We send them to bad schools. We don't give them economic opportunity. How do we balance the economic situation? That, to me, is the biggest problem we got in this country right now.
You want to build on that?
I do. One of the things I say in Unified is my personal story. I come from one of those distressed communities, raised in a single-parent household. The chasm between the haves and have-nots is not based on race. It's based on family formation and education. Those are the two pillars that divide our country. So the faster we improve education, whether it's public, private, whether it's virtual schools or homeschools, we must make sure that every child in a poor zip code has a quality education. If that happens, we can transform the complexion of who has and who does not have. It is not a racial, there's a racial component to it, but the vast majority of the problem that we face today is economic.
And education. I know South Carolina just came
massive.
out. South Carolina was ranked #1 in education. Did you guys see that? Jillian
did
had it as
not.
a headline last week.
Right.
So South Carolina, I'm from South Carolina, as y'all know. Very, very proud of y'all. Do you think you'll ever run together? You could be a winning ticket.
I have run from.
You said everyone in Washington wants to be president. So I guess you'd be the vice president because you were the only one that said you didn't want to be.
No, I hope he runs for president in 2024 or whenever it fits his heart. And frankly, whether he wins or not, his hopeful, optimistic view of life is something that has benefited me. His life narrative, I think, would be inspiring for everyone. But I've run for my last
Tim,
political office.
how did you become a Republican?
You know, basically two major factors. My father and my family are strong in the military. One of my brothers went to the Air Force Academy. Another brother was a command sergeant major in the Army. My dad was 22 years in the Air Force. And the second part was my mentor, who found me as almost a high school dropout. I failed world geography and civics, Spanish and English. You fail Spanish and English, you're not bilingual, okay? His name was John Moniz, Chick-fil-A operator, who taught me that all things are possible no matter where you come from. He was a conservative Christian Republican. He never talked politics, he talked principles. That's why I know that the conservative principles that undergird the success of this nation,
And those are American.
always leads to American exceptionalism for anyone who will take the time to study the principles and then apply them. Our country's amazing. Our best days are absolutely ahead of her.
Right. Now, we're going to speak for an hour on the radio, but the reason why he's stuck in Congress even the next 2 years because you begged him, and then he had the Benghazi probe. You said, that's it, I'm done, I'm finished, I'm through. And now he is, when you won your 6 years on your own, you're staying in Washington, and you're going to let him go.
Yeah, that's our next book, Why He Left and Why I Stayed.
Absolutely.
It's a short story.
We both have tremendous impact, and it's great. And I think it's a great message, you guys coming together. And if you want to send a real message, buy their book. All right?
Unified.
How about the pediatrician my mom chose for all three of us, the Earhart children, was in practice with your dad in Spartanburg, South Carolina?
Well, your mom's kids turned out better than my dad's kids did. So.
It was all those shots. I got a lot of shots.
And next hour, all the medical records between you two will be exposed. That'll be
Release.
fantastic.
I love it.
Great to see you guys.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Have you met Jillian?
I saw you guys downstairs earlier.
We met her downstairs, yes.
How did it go?
We were intimidated. So
They were getting mic'd up.
afraid to talk.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Jillian,
Let's
don't be afraid to talk, promise.
Let's get you caught up on your headlines this morning, starting with this story. Officers rush to a fiery crash and pull a man to safety. The dramatic scene playing out on police body camera.
Now, can you unlock your car? Your car's on fire. You're all right. We got you. Keep going.
The officer breaking a window to get the driver out after he crashed in Oklahoma. Seconds later, the entire car was engulfed in flames. The driver later charged with DUI. Supporting Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election is costing Planned Parenthood big bucks. The Federal Election Commission fining a Wisconsin branch nearly $6,000 for failing to accurately report thousands of dollars in donations to Hillary Clinton and former Senator Russ Feingold. Both candidates lost their elections. Planned Parenthood claims the error was due to a filing mistake. More than 1/3 of American workers would give up their right to vote in exchange for a 10% raise. The shocking numbers revealed in a new survey by LendEDU, a loan refinancing site. It also found more than 9% of employed adults would give up their child's right to vote. 40% say they would give up dental care. 12% would even break up with their significant other. Wow, let's look at your headlines. What do you guys think about that?
All right. We actually didn't hear it. We were talking to them.
Yeah, we can't lie.
So we will just say okay. Whatever you said.
Didn't hear it all.
I just heard breakup.
Love is in the air. That's all I heard.
That's right.
Thanks,
All right.
Jillian.
Thanks, Jillian. We're going to watch the tape back later. All right, let me tell you what's straight ahead. President Trump tweeting moments ago. That usually gets a lot of people scared, including the guys to my left. The U.S. is